Part of a biography of Venerable Archan Mun. The Venerable Archan Mun Buddhassa, Archan Mun, was a Vipassana meditation master of the highest caliber of this present age, genuinely worthy of the eminent praise and admiration accorded to him by his close disciples. He taught the profound nature of Dhamma with such authority and persuasion that he left no doubts among his students about the exalted level of his spiritual attainment. His devoted followers consist of numerous monks and laity from virtually every region of Thailand. Besides these, he has many more devotees in Laos, where monks and lay people revere him deeply. His story is magnificent, from his early years in lay life through his long endeavor as a Buddhist monk to the day he finally died. Archan Mun was born into a traditional Buddhist family on January 20, 1870, in the village of Ban Kombong in the Kong Giam district of Ubon Ratchathani. He was the eldest child of 8 siblings, though only 2 of them were still alive when he passed away. A child of small stature with a fair complexion, he was naturally quick, energetic, intelligent, and resourceful. At 15, he was ordained as a novice in his village monastery, where he developed an enthusiasm for studying Dhamma, memorizing the texts with exceptional speed. A young beginner of affable character, he never caused his teachers or fellows any trouble. 2 years later into his new life, his father requested him to give up the robes, and he was required to return to help out at home. However, his fondness for the monk's life was so pronounced that he was sure he would ordain again someday. His good memories of life in a monk's robes never faded. Thus, he resolved to enter the monkhood again as soon as possible. This strong sense of purpose was due, no doubt, to the power of that indomitable faith, known as saddha, which was such an integral part of his character. When he reached 22, he felt to ordain as a monk. So, for that purpose, his parents do not discourage his aspirations, and having kept the hope that their son would ordain again someday, they gave their permission. To this end, they provided him with a complete set of a monk's essential requisites for his ordination. On June 12, 1893, he received his bhikkhu ordination at Wat-che Monastery in the provincial town of Ubon Ratchathani. His Upajjhaya was the Venerable Ari Yakawi, his Kammava Karaya was Pra-kru Sitha, and his Anusasana Karaya was Pra-kru Projik Ubon Kun. He was given the monastic name Buddhassa. After his ordination, he took residence at Wat-che in Akarya Sao's Vipassana Meditation Center. When Archan Mun first began practicing Vipassana at Akarya Sao Center, he constantly meditated, internally repeating the word Buddho, the recollection of the Buddha, as he preferred this preparatory Dhamma theme above all others. Initially, he needed to experience the degree of calm and happiness he expected, which caused him to doubt whether he was practicing correctly. Despite his doubt, he didn't flag in his persistent use of the word Buddho. Eventually, his heart developed a certain measure of calm. At the same time, he carefully observed the wandering practices he undertook at the time of his ordination and continued to practice for the rest of his life. Archan Mun also observed the remainder of the 13 wandering practices when circumstances were convenient, but he upheld the above 7 routinely until they became integrated into his character. They became so much a part of him that it would be difficult to find one who is his equal these days. On his own accord, he showed earnestness in finding meaning in everything he did. He never approached his duties half-heartedly. All he did was toward the noble effort of destroying the passion within himself. Due to this sense of purpose, he allowed no hiding room in his heart for arrogance and conceit despite being exposed to the same defiling influences as everyone else. As a Buddhist monk, Archan Mun has gone through many difficulties in his practice. His journey is a transformation. He has learned to see the world differently and found a new purpose in life. One time Archan Mun spent 3 years living and practicing in Sarika Cave. His entire stay there was filled with the most unusual, memorable experiences. He first arrived at Banglue village, the village nearest the cave and thus close enough to be convenient for alms. Unfamiliar with the area, he asked the villagers to take him to Sarika Cave. The villagers warned him that it was an extraordinary cave possessing numerous supernatural powers. They insisted that no monk could live there unless his virtue were pure. Many monks who had tried to live there quickly fell ill with various painful symptoms, and many had even died before they could be brought down for treatment. They told him that the cave was the domain of a spirit of immense size possessing many magical powers. It also had a very foul temper, and a giant spirit guarded the cave from all intruders, monks being no exception. Unexpected occurrences awaited all intruders into the cave, many of whom ended up dead. The spirit delighted in testing any monk who came bragging about his mastery of magic spells for warding off spirits. The cave's guardian exercised absolute authority over the whole area and would allow trespass. So any trespasser was immediately chased away except a person of such nobility with perfect virtue and a loving, compassionate heart, who extended these noble qualities to all living beings, was allowed to live in the cave. Thus, the villagers worried about the fate that awaited Archan Mun, not wanting him to become the next victim. Archan Mun asked what they meant by saying that some monks went up there never to return. Why hadn't they come down again? He was told that having died there, they couldn't come back down. The villagers recounted a story of 4 seemingly competent monks killed in the cave not long before. In another incident, there is a monk. Before entering the cave, he assures the villagers that he has no fear of the spirit, for he knows a potent spell that could protect him against ghosts and other spirits, plus much additional mighty power. He was convinced no spirit could threaten him. The villagers warn him repeatedly about the dangers, but he repeats that he has no fear and insists on being taken to the cave. The villagers had no other choice, so they showed him the way. Once there, he came down with various illnesses, sleeping fitfully, and dreamt he was being taken away to death. Many different monks had tried to live there over the years, but their experiences were strikingly similar. Some died or fled. The 4 most recent monks died within a relatively short period. The villagers couldn't guarantee that an evil spirit caused their deaths, perhaps there was another reason. But they had always noticed a powerful presence connected with the cave. Local people weren't so bold as to challenge its power, for they were wary of it and envisioned themselves being carried back down in critical condition or as corpses. Archan Mun questioned them further to satisfy himself that they were telling the truth. They assured him that such things happened so often and frightened them to think about it. For this reason, they warned any monk or lay person who came to search the cave for sacred objects. Whether the cave contained sacred things is another matter. Ultimately, it is impossible to say whether it had holy objects. However, the belief that it did was enough to impact the people who came to it significantly. The villagers had never seen such things in the cave, nor had they seen those seeking them encounter anything but death or narrow escapes from death. Thus, fearing Archan Mun's safety, they begged him not to go. Archan Mun gave the villagers a sympathetic hearing, but he was still curious to see the cave. Live or die, and he wanted to test himself and discover the truth of those stories. The scary tales didn't frighten him in the least. He saw this adventure as a means to arouse mindfulness and acquire many new ideas for contemplation. He possessed the courage to face whatever was to happen. He was interested in seeking the truth. So he informed the villagers that, although the stories were frightening, he still liked to spend time in the cave. Assuring them that he would hurry back down at the first sign of trouble, he asked to be escorted to the cave, which they obligingly did. Archan Mun's physical condition for several days remained normal. The environment around the cave was secluded and very quiet, disturbed only by the natural sounds of wild animals foraging for food in the forest. He passed the first few nights contentedly but began to suffer stomach pains on subsequent nights. Although such pains were nothing new, this time, however, the condition grew steadily worse. Before long, his stomach refused to digest food properly, it simply passed straight through. This made him reflect on what the villagers had said about 4 monks dying there recently. If his condition didn't improve, he may be the 5th. Next morning, when laypeople came to see him, he sent them to look in the forest for certain medicinal plants that he had previously found beneficial. He tried several different mixtures of herbs, but none relieved his symptoms. His body was frail with each passing day. And his mental resolve was not significantly affected, it was weaker than usual. As he sat drinking the medicine one day, a thought arose that reinforced his resolve, prompting a self-critical examination. I've been taking this medicine for many days. I should see some positive results if it is an effective stomach cure. But every day, my condition worsens. Why doesn't this medicine have the desired effect? It may not help at all. With this solemn determination, he stopped taking all medicines and began earnestly focusing on meditation as the sole remedy for all spiritual and bodily ailments. Discarding concern for his life, he let his body follow its natural course, concentrating on probing the mind, that essential knowing nature that never dies yet has death as its constant companion. He began examining the reason. After using the full powers of mindfulness, wisdom, faith, and perseverance that he had been developing within himself for so long. At that moment of realization, his mind converged into a complete calm, seeing his spiritual resolve immeasurably strengthened, and his bodily illness vanishes. All disappeared simultaneously, remaining only briefly in complete stillness. His mind withdrew slightly, reaching the level of samadhi. This luminous mind then left the confines of his body and immediately encountered an enormous black man standing 30 feet tall. The towering figure carried a huge metal rod 12 feet long. Walking up to Archan Mun, he announced in a menacing voice that he was about to pound him into the ground. He warned Archan Mun to flee immediately if he wished to remain alive. The metal rod resting on his shoulder was so huge that a single blow from it would have been enough to pound a giant bull elephant into the earth. Archan Mun focused on the giant spirit, asking why he wanted to rot him to death. "I have done nothing to deserve this." He reminded the giant that he had harmed no one while living there and caused no trouble deserving of such deadly punishment. The giant spirit replied that he had been guarding that mountain for a long time and would not want anyone else to take over and take decisive action against all intruders. Archan Mun's response was reproachful, "I did not come here to usurp anyone's authority. I came to carry on the noble work of spiritual development, aiming to usurp the power that passion exercises over my heart. Harming a virtuous monk in any way is a despicable act. I am a disciple of the Lord Buddha. Does the great authority give you the power to override the control of Dhamma and Karma, those immutable laws that govern the existence of all living beings?" The spirit replied, "No." Archan Mun said, "The Lord Buddha possessed the skill and the courage to destroy those insidious mental defilements that like boasting of power and authority. Thus, Archan Mun banished all his thoughts of beating or killing other people from his heart. You think you're so smart? Have you ever thought about taking decisive action against the passion in your heart?" The spirit admitted, "Not yet, sir." "In that case, such overbearing authority will make you a cruel, savage individual, resulting in grave consequences. You don't possess the power needed to rid yourself of evil, so you use the fires of magic against others, unaware that you are actually burning yourself. You are creating a very grave karma indeed. As though that weren't bad enough, you want to attack and kill someone who represents Dhamma's virtues, which are central to the world's well-being. I am a man of integrity. How can you ever hope to lay claim to laudable virtues when you insist on engaging in evil behavior of such unparalleled brutality? I have come here with the purest intentions to practice Dhamma for my spiritual benefit and the benefit of others. Despite that, you threaten to pound me into the ground, giving no thought to the consequences of such an evil deed. Don't you realize it will drag you into hell, where you will reap the terrible misery you have sown? I feel very sorry for you. You've become so obsessed with your authority that it's burning you alive. Can your potent powers withstand the effect of the grave act you are about to commit? You say you exercise sovereign authority over this mountain, but can your magic powers override Dhamma and the laws of karma? If your powers are superior to Dhamma, pound me to death. I'm not afraid to die. Even if I don't die today, my death remains inevitable. The world is where all born must die, even you, blinded as you are by your self-importance. You are not above the end of the laws of karma that govern all living beings." The mysterious being stood listening, rigid as a statue, the deadly metal rod resting on his shoulder as Archan warned him through samadhi meditation. He stood so wholly still that if he were a human, we would say the giant spirit was so scared and ashamed he could scarcely breathe. But this was a special non-human being, so he didn't breathe. Even though he managed to do so admirably, his whole manner clearly showed him to be so ashamed and fearful of Archan Mun that he could barely restrain his emotions. After Archan Mun finished speaking, suddenly, the contrite spirit flung the metal rod down from his shoulder and transformed his appearance from a giant, black creature into a devout Buddhist gentleman with a mild, courteous demeanor. Approaching Archan Mun with heartfelt respect, the gentleman asked for forgiveness, expressing deep remorse. Here is what he said: I was surprised and somewhat frightened the first moment I saw you. I immediately noticed a strange and fantastic radiance extending out all around you, a brilliance unlike anything I had ever seen. It created such a profound impact that I felt weak in your presence. I couldn't do anything, so captivated was I by that radiant glow. Still, I didn't know what it was, for I had never experienced anything like this before. My threats to kill you a moment ago didn't come from my heart's true feelings. Instead, they stemmed from a long-held belief that I possess unrivaled authority over non-human beings and humans with evil intent who lack moral principles. Such power can be imposed on anyone at any time, and that person will be powerless to resist. This arrogant sense of self-importance led me to confront you. Feeling vulnerable, I didn't want to lose face. Even as I threatened you, I felt nervous and hesitant, unable to act on my threat. It was merely the stance of being accustomed to wielding power over others. Please be compassionate to forgive my rude behavior today. I don't wish to suffer the consequences of evil anymore. As it is now, I suffer enough and won't have the strength to bear it. Archan Mun was curious. You are a prominent individual with enormous power and prestige. You have a non-physical body, so you needn't experience the human hardships of hunger and fatigue. As a result of the discussion, the mysterious celestial being, showing great respect for the Dhamma he heard, affirmed his devotion to the three refuges, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. He let it be known that he also considered Archan Mun one of his refuges, asking Archan Mun to bear witness to his faith. At the same time, he offered Archan Mun his complete protection, inviting him to remain in the cave indefinitely. Archan Mun would have spent the rest of his life there had his wish been granted. This being cherished the opportunity to care for him. He wanted to ensure that nothing disturbed Archan Mun's meditation. Actually, the giant spirit was not some mysterious being, it was merely a hallucination. He was the chief leader of all the terrestrial devas in that region. His large entourage lived in an area centered in the mountains of Nakhon-Nayok and extended over many of the surrounding provinces. Archan Mun's mind had converged into a calm at midnight, after which he met the terrestrial deva, communicating through samadhi meditation until morning when his mind withdrew to ordinary consciousness. The stomach disorder troubling him so much when he sat down at dusk had entirely disappeared. He used Dhamma's therapeutic power through meditation as the only remedy. The therapeutic power of Dhamma, administered through meditation, was the only remedy he needed to effect a decisive cure, an experience that Archan Mun found incredibly impressive. Foregoing sleep, he continued striving in his practice until dawn. Instead of feeling tired after a night of exertion, his body was more energetic than ever. He had passed a night full of many unforgettable experiences. He witnessed Dhamma's powerful ability to tame an unruly spirit, transforming arrogance into faith. His mind remained serenely calm for many hours, savoring that wonderful sense of happiness. A chronic illness was completely cured, and his digestion returned to normal. Archan was satisfied that his mind had acquired a solid spiritual basis, one it could trust, thus dispelling many of his lingering doubts. He realized many unusual insights he had never before attained, both those that removed defilements and those that enhanced the unique understanding which formed an intrinsic part of his character. During the following months, his meditation progressed smoothly, accompanied by indescribable peace and tranquility. With his health back to normal, physical discomforts no longer troubled him. Sometimes, late at night, he met with gatherings of terrestrial devas who came from various places to visit him. Devas from the surrounding area had all heard of Archan Mun, for the mysterious deva who had engaged him in a war of words was now announcing his presence to others and escorting groups of them to meet him. On the nights when no visitors came, he enjoyed himself practicing meditation. This is one part of a story about Archan Mun throughout his lifetime. Suppose you wish to pray to the Venerable Archan Mun, light incense and offer fresh water and fragrant flowers. First, recite the Buddhist Sutras 3 times, and continue with the following Katha for Venerable Archan Mun. Repeat it 3 times. You may repeat it for more, according to your faith. Now let us chant the preliminary prayer. Before chanting to any Thai Buddhist statue or amulet, first, chant 3 times of this initial mantra. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Buddhassa.
นะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะ
ปัญจมารีชิโนนาโถปัตโตสัมโพธิมุตตมังจตุสัจจังปกาเสติธัมมะจักกังปวัตตยิเอเตนะสัจจะวัชเชนะโหตุเมชยะมังคลังปัญจมารีชิโนนาโถปัตโตสัมโพธิมุตตมังจตุสัจจังปกาเสติธัมมะจักกังปวัตตยิเอเตนะสัจจะวัชเชนะโหตุเมชยะมังคลังปัญจมารีชิโนนาโถปัตโตสัมโพธิมุตตมังจตุสัจจังปกาเสติธัมมะจักกังปวัตตยิเอเตนะสัจจะวัชเชนะโหตุเมชยะมังคลัง
If you are going through a difficult time, remember the Master's story. Know that you are not alone and that you can overcome any obstacle if you are willing to persevere. May the Holy Spirit of Venerable Archan Mun bless you in every thought, deed, and word you say and protect you.